Okay, so we're diving into a pretty wild piece of Hollywood history today.
Definitely a story that just keeps on grabbing people's attention.
It's April 4th, 1958.
Uh-huh.
We're at Lana Turner's house, picture Beverly Hills, the whole scene.
Right.
Her boyfriend, Johnny Stompanato,
Yeah.
gets killed.
Yeah.
And it's her daughter, Cheryl Crane, who's only 14 at the time, that ends up...
It's a lot to unpack, for sure.
It really is.
But we've got some really solid sources lined up for this.
Lay it on me.
So we're going to be hitting up the Wikipedia entry for Killing of Johnny Stompanato, which is always a good starting point.
Oh, for sure.
We've also got an article called Lana Turner and Hollywood's Biggest Scandal.
Ooh, dramatic.
Totally.
And what else?
Okay, this one's from the Hairpin, and it's called Scandals of Classic Hollywood. Lana Turner, Sweater Girl Gone Bad.
Nice.
So we're getting different angles here, different perspectives on the event itself,
Yeah.
all the background, the aftermath.
Exactly. And I think that's key because we don't just want to get caught up in the gossip, right?
No way.
We want to understand what actually happened, the fallout, and like all those questions that still hang over this whole thing.
It's a notorious scandal, and I think a lot of folks out there probably only know the surface level.
Exactly.
So we're going deep, but we're keeping it digestible, I promise.
Perfect. I'm all for that.
Okay, so first things first. Who are these people?
Yes, starting with Lana Turner.
Even if you're not like a total classic Hollywood buff, you probably heard the name.
Oh, yeah. It's iconic.
She was huge in the golden age, 1940s, 1950s. Just think peak Hollywood glamour.
Stunning beauty, too.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources really highlight that.
And she had this charisma just like radiating off the screen.
But her personal life, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster. Let's just say that.
Lots of drama, lots of tragedy, as we'll see.
Definitely.
And her start in Hollywood, I mean, talk about a classic tale.
It's like the quintessential discovered at a soda fountain story.
Yeah, I think everyone's heard some version of that.
Right. So according to the sources, she's like 16, hanging out at this place called the Top Hat Malt Shop in San Francisco.
Okay.
And bam, Talent Scout spots her, changes her life forever.
Wow.
Now, the Hairpin article, they kind of playfully point out that the details change depending on who's telling it.
I can imagine.
Sometimes it's Schwab's Pharmacy, sometimes the outfit's different.
Right.
But the core of it, the chance encounter, the screen test, the contract with MGM, one of the biggest studios.
Pepper stays the same.
Exactly. And from there, she just skyrockets.
So Sweater Girl, that's a nickname that really stuck with her, right?
Oh, yeah, from early on.
What was the significance of that?
It really came from her role in this 1937 movie called They Won't Forget.
Okay.
And the Hairpin piece, they describe it pretty vividly. Her character, she's young, and her figure, especially highlighted by, you guessed it, a tight sweater.
Got it.
And that just became this instant symbol of like youthful sex appeal, and it just clung to her.
So it shaped her image right from the start.
Totally. Though later on, she really proved herself as an actress, like in 1946 with that film noir classic, The Postman Always Rings Twice.
Ah, yeah, classic.
And there she plays, like the ultimate femme fatale.
Okay, so femme fatale, I feel like we hear that term a lot, especially with these old Hollywood stories.
It's a big one.
What does it actually mean, though?
So it's this stock character in film noir, right?
Okay.
Often a beautiful, seductive woman.
Alluring.
Exactly. But she's also dangerous. Her charms lead men to their doom, basically.
Oh, I see. So she's using her attractiveness to manipulate things.
Yeah, and that often ends really badly for the guys involved.
Makes sense.
And it's interesting because with Lana Turner, that femme fatale image, it kind of bled into how people saw her in real life, too.
Oh, interesting. So that role in The Postman Always Rings Twice, it solidified her as a serious actress.
Absolutely.
But it also reinforced that image of her being this captivating, potentially dangerous woman.
It definitely played a part.
Now, let's talk about Johnny Stompanato.
Yeah, he's not your typical Hollywood heartthrob, that's for sure.
Not even close.
The sources paint him as a guy very much connected to the underbelly of Los Angeles.
Right.
Former Marine. But more importantly, he was tied to the Cohen crime family.
The Cohen crime family, that name rings a bell.
Yeah, they were notorious. Basically, an organized crime syndicate operating in L.A.
And Stompanato's connection to them?
He was linked to Icky Cohen, the big name in that whole operation.
Got it.
So we're talking about illegal gambling, rackets, the whole 9 yards.
Not exactly the glamorous Hollywood scene.
Not at all. And his relationship with Lana Turner, It was, well, let's just say it wasn't smooth sailing.
The sources use the word tumultuous a lot.
And for good reason. Constant arguments, fights, accusations of physical abuse from him towards her.
That's terrible.
Yeah, and there was this pattern of breaking up and getting back together.
A toxic cycle.
Yeah, and the Wikipedia entry even mentions this crazy incident in London. So Turner's filming another time, another place, and Stompanato shows up, disrupts the whole production, physically attacks her.
Set.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, and he ended up getting deported.
Wow.
And get this, her co-star, Sean Connery, he actually stepped in and helped get Stompanato out of there.
Wow, that's a story for another time.
Right. But even after all that, they still ended up back together.
It's crazy how these things can happen.
It really is. And then there's Cheryl Crane, Lana Turner's daughter.
Yeah, only 14 years old when this
A
happened.
teenager caught in a really awful situation.
And it all went down at Lana Turner's rented house.
730 North Bedford Drive in Beverly Hills, just to be exact.
They'd only moved in about a week before the killing.
Adds another layer of, like, instability to the whole thing.
So let's get into that night, April 4th, 1958.
Okay, so Stompanato arrives around 8:00 p.m.
What triggers the argument, the one that ends so tragically?
Sources point to a fight in the bedroom.
Okay.
Seems like jealousy was a big factor. Stompanato thought Turner might be seeing other guys.
Yeah, that's never good.
Not at all. And Turner was apparently fed up with Stompanato's continued involvement in, his illegal activities.
Even though he promised to stop.
Exactly. So things escalate quickly.
Yeah.
And Stompanato starts making some really serious threats.
Threats towards.
Both the Wikipedia entry and the hairpin article mention threats to kill Turner, Cheryl, even Turner's mother.
That's terrifying.
Totally. And he's throwing around what they call gangster threats, talking about breaking her bones, slashing her face with a razor.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a picture of a domestic dispute completely out of control.
And it's at this point that Turner breaks things off and tells him to leave.
Right.
But then Cheryl Crane gets involved.
This is where it all changes.
What happens?
Cheryl's in the next room, overhears the whole thing getting more and more violent.
She must have been so scared.
You can imagine. She's hearing these threats, knowing Stompanato's history of violence.
So she decides.
She grabs a kitchen knife.
Oh my God.
And then what? So Cheryl's account, which is quoted in the Wikipedia entry from a later interview, is that her mom's bedroom door flies open.
Okay.
She sees Stompanato coming towards her, hand raised like he's going to hit her. She reacts instinctively, raises the knife, and tragically, he walks right into it.
Oh my God, that's awful.
It is. And according to her, his last words were, "My God, Cheryl, what have you done?"
Chillin'.
Yeah. And Lana Turner, she backs up Cheryl's story.
But she was in shock at first, right?
Yeah, she initially thought Cheryl had just punched him. It was only when he collapsed and she saw the blood that she realized what had actually happened. And the Wikipedia entry highlights that Cheryl's first instinct was to call her dad, Joseph Stephen Crane.
While Turner was trying to get a doctor.
Desperate situation. They're trying to save him. The doctor gives him an adrenaline shot, uses a respirator.
And nothing's working.
No pulse. So they call 911.
And of course, that brings the police to the scene.
Johnny Stompanato is pronounced dead at the house.
And then the autopsy, that really lays out the severity of the injury. What did it say?
Single knife wound, but it went through his liver, his portal vein, and his aorta.
Oh, wow.
Massive internal bleeding. That's what killed him.
So the aftermath of this, it's confessions, it's legal proceedings, everything starts moving fast.
Yeah.
Police Chief Clinton Anderson, he's at the house, and Lana Turner, she's begging him to let her take the blame.
Even though Cheryl had already confessed to her father.
Like a mother trying to protect her child, it's heartbreaking.
Totally. And within an hour of the homicide, both Turner and her ex-husband, Stephen Crane, they've got Jerry Giesler on board.
Who's that?
He was a big-time attorney, like top-notch.
So they knew this was serious business right from the get-go.
Absolutely no time wasted.
And early the next morning, Cheryl is turned over to the Beverly Hills Police Department.
Booked on a holding charge, gives a formal statement, the whole thing, about the threats, what led up to the stabbing.
And while all that's happening, the press is going wild, right?
Oh yeah, full-blown media frenzy.
The Wikipedia entry mentions that Turner, Stephen Crane, and Giesler, they were actually asked to leave the police station.
Too much chaos. The press was just overwhelming the place.
I can't even imagine.
And Cheryl, she's held in juvenile hall while they figure out the next steps.
But then things get even more intense.
Right, because all these love letters between Stompanato and Turner, They get published.
Adding fuel to the fire.
Exactly. It's a media circus at this point.
And then comes the coroner's inquest.
April 11th, just a few days later.
And it was a huge public event, right?
Oh yeah, the sources describe it as near riotous. That's how much attention this was getting.
So many key players called to testify.
Let's see, we've got Mickey Cohen, Stompanato's underworld buddy, but he refuses to say anything.
Pleading the fifth, I assume?
Exactly. Wouldn't even identify Stompanato's body in photos.
Wow.
Then there's this guy, Stephen Trussow. He claims to be Stompanato's friend, causes a scene yelling about a lover's quarrel.
Trying to get his 15 minutes of fame, maybe?
Could be. Anyway, they'll let him testify.
Okay, so who else?
Police Chief Anderson, he's up there saying he's satisfied with Cheryl's confession.
Okay.
Officer Joseph B. Payne, he talks about arriving at the scene, talking to Cheryl's dad.
What about Stephen Crane? What did he say?
Testified about that frantic phone call he got from Cheryl right after it happened.
And Lana Turner's mother, Mildred, she was there too, right?
She was, but she was apparently so distraught that they excused her from testifying.
Understandable.
Yeah, tough situation all around.
So what about Cheryl's testimony?
Well, she didn't actually appear at the inquest.
Oh, okay.
They read her written statement aloud, the one she gave to the police.
And what did it say?
All about hearing the threats, being scared for her mom, what she did in the bedroom, saying she thought Stompanato was going to hurt her mom.
And then the moment everyone was waiting for, Lana Turner takes the stand.
The Philadelphia Inquirer, they called it the highlight of a circus-like hearing. And they weren't wrong.
Talk about dramatic.
You can picture it. The room goes silent. She starts talking about the day, shopping with Stompanato, like everything's normal.
Leading up to the fight.
Exactly. And she sticks to her story about the stabbing, saying it happened so fast, thought it was a punch at first.
Never even saw the knife.
Right. And she describes Stompanato's last moments, really paints a vivid picture.
Sources say she was incredibly emotional during all this.
Oh, yeah. Reportedly broke down crying after she was done speaking.
And of course, the press immediately jumped on that, comparing her testimony to her acting.
Like they couldn't believe a woman could be genuinely emotional in such a public setting.
Says a lot about the time, doesn't it?
For sure. The expectations on women, especially in Hollywood, it's a whole conversation.
Absolutely. So after all the testimony, 4 hours of it,
And 25 minutes of deliberation.
the verdict comes in.
Justifiable homicide.
Cheryl Crane is exonerated.
Big legal win.
But it wasn't over for her yet, right?
No. She became a ward of the court temporarily until a juvenile court hearing on April 24th.
And that one was closed to the public.
Yep. And while she was released to her grandmother's care, the judge had some concerns about, parental supervision.
So what happened?
Both Cheryl and her parents were ordered to see a psychiatrist, like regular sessions.
To try and address the underlying issues, I guess.
Makes sense given everything that had gone down.
And amidst all this, Cheryl's father, Stephen Crane, he announces he's going to fight for full custody.
Which must have added to the stress and tension for everyone.
For sure. And public opinion, even though Cheryl was cleared legally, it remained divided.
Yeah, people had their doubt.
And the press, they were particularly harsh on Lana Turner.
Oh, yes. Some accused her of putting on a show during her testimony, saying it was all an act.
Just because she was emotional.
Exactly. And they compared it to her movie roles. Even Life magazine published this side-by-side of her on the stand and stills from her films.
Trying to make her look insincere.
Totally. And some big-time columnists at the time, they didn't hold back, suggesting this was her best performance yet.
Like she was playing a role instead of living through a real tragedy.
It's pretty messed up when you think about it.
In her career, it definitely took a hit.
Yeah, the movie she had finished, Another Time, Another Place, it came out right around the inquest and flopped.
Maybe people were too caught up in the real-life drama.
It's possible the scandal definitely overshadowed everything else.
And then there's the wrongful death lawsuit.
Right. Stompanato's ex-wife, Sarah Ibrahim, she files this suit, wants $750,000 in damages from Turner, Cheryl, and Stephen Crane.
$750,000. That's a huge amount.
It is. And the lawsuit basically said that Lana Turner was the one who stabbed Stompanato.
And that Cheryl took the blame.
Exactly, to protect her mother.
And they even went after Stephen Crane, saying he didn't get medical help fast enough.
Trying to cover all the bases.
But the depositions in that case, they uncovered some inconsistencies, didn't they?
Yeah, some testimony suggesting Stompanato might have been stabbed while lying down.
Which contradicts the story from the inquest.
Right, and even more surprising, Cheryl couldn't really remember the stabbing or even her written statement.
Wow, talk about throwing a wrench in things.
It definitely raised more questions, made people wonder if the official version of events was the whole truth.
So how much should we trust what happened at the inquest?
It's tough to say for sure. Those inconsistencies definitely added fuel to the conspiracy theories.
But the lawsuit, it was settled out of court, right?
Yeah, in 1962 for $20,000.
A lot less than they were asking for.
Way less. And the fact that they settled, it suggests maybe neither side was totally confident they could win in court.
So this case, it's had a lasting impact.
Oh, absolutely. Time magazine even called it one of the crimes of the century.
Wow, up there with the biggest Hollywood scandals.
Definitely. And like with most high-profile sensational cases, it spawned a whole bunch of conspiracy theories.
That still circulate today.
Yep. The most popular one being that Lana Turner actually did it.
And Cheryl protected her.
That's the theory.
And there have been claims over the years that seem to support that idea.
Right. Like Lana Turner's hairdresser, Eric Root, he wrote a memoir.
Okay.
And in it, he claims that Turner confessed to him years later.
Saying she was the one who stabbed Stompanato.
Yep. But Cheryl Crane, she denies that completely.
Of course she would.
Then there's Sidney Gilroff. He was a big-time stylist at MGM. And he said that Turner told him she was going to buy a knife the day before the killing.
Interesting.
Turner confirmed that she and Stompanato had gone shopping for kitchen stuff.
Including knives.
Yeah, carving knives specifically for her new house.
And one of those knives was the murder weapon.
Exactly. It all gets very murky.
And then there was that 48-hour special. In 2012, they revisited the case, talked to historians, Cheryl Crane herself, even Stompanato's son, Johnny Brahim.
Who, of course, doesn't believe the official story.
And Cheryl, during that special, she was very firm in defending herself and her mother.
Absolutely, standing by her account.
And beyond the theories and the legal battles, this whole thing had a cultural impact, too.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Harold Robbins' novel Where Love Has Gone, that was inspired by this, and then they made it into a movie.
Woody Allen's movie September, that's got a storyline that's pretty clearly based on the Turner-Stompanato affair.
Really?
Yeah, and it's even referenced in This Boy's Life.
So it really seeped into pop culture.
Definitely. Even a BBC Radio 4 drama called A Night with Johnny Stompanato.
Wow. So this event, it kind of became intertwined with Lana Turner's public image.
Right. And the Hairpin article, they make a really interesting point about that.
What do they say?
They argue that this scandal, in a weird way, it almost fit with the existing narrative around her.
Because she already had that sweater girl image.
Yeah. From the 30s and 40s, then she becomes this glamorous but also kind of troubled leading lady, even playing a femme fatale on screen.
Right. And her personal life was already full of drama, multiple marriages, that air of danger.
Exactly. So the Hairpin piece says that the Stompanato killing, it wasn't just scandalous, it was almost scintillating because it seemed to confirm this image of her.
As a beautiful but potentially volatile woman.
Right, and the studio had even created this whole backstory for her, blaming her turbulent life on a difficult childhood.
Trying to explain it away.
Yeah, and then Peyton Place comes out, huge success, and her character in that, she also gives emotional testimony in court.
Blurring the lines between fiction and reality.
Totally, and the Hairpin compares her to Britney Spears, another female star whose personal struggles became very public.
Showing a darker side of the American dream.
Yeah, that's a really interesting parallel.
And this scandal, it changed how the media treated celebrities, didn't it?
Absolutely. I think it pushed them towards a more aggressive, intrusive style of reporting.
Always trying to get the scoop, no matter the cost.
And it also, even though it was through this very public, sensationalized lens, it brought up the issue of domestic violence.
Which wasn't talked about as openly back then.
Not at all. So it had this unintended consequence of putting a spotlight on that problem.
This whole case really makes you think about the power of fame, how easily public perception can be shaped.
And how we tend to simplify complex situations.
So, to wrap things up, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
The events of that night, the legal stuff, the public scrutiny, the conspiracy theories.
All the angles.
We wanted to give you a clear picture of this Hollywood scandal.
A deep dive, but not overwhelming.
Exactly, and it leaves you with a lot to think about.
It does, doesn't it?
Like, why are we still so fascinated by this case?
What does it say about our relationship with celebrity, with scandal?
Especially when it comes to women in Hollywood.
Right. How much has really changed since 1958?
Are we still quick to judge, to speculate, to create these narratives around public figures?
Those are questions worth asking, for sure.
Definitely food for thought for everyone listening.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
This has been a fascinating one.
Until next time.
See you then.